Good evening. You're watching the news at 6. News at 6 is all about the day's biggest stories, and we'll be filling in on them over the next half hour. We'll be talking about the big event of today. The repo rate has been cut by 50 basis points by the RBI. Does this mean cheaper loans for us? We'll talk about that with a special guest as well. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. The RBI cuts interest rates by 50 basis points to 6.75%. Home loans expected to get cheaper. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up 5-day visit to the US, says it demonstrates extraordinary depth and diversity of the relationship. Case registered against BJP leader Sushil Modi in Bihar. The FIR alleges that he was offering freebies to voters. The Russian President Putin says he can consider joining coalition forces against the Islamic State, but insists that the Syrian President Assad will remain. And Shashank Manohar likely to get a second innings as BCCI chairman when the board meets to elect Dalmia's successor on the 4th of October. Srinivasan barred from attending the meet. Well, top story this evening. In a surprise move, the Reserve Bank of India today slashed the interest rates to a 4-year low. This marks the 4th repo rate cut by the RBI this year. RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan said the focus should now shift to bringing inflation down to 5% by the end of the next financial year. However, he revised GDP growth target to 7.4%, which the government said needs reassessment.
How do you want to do it?
With the inflation at record low in the past few months and growing pressure from the government as well as the industry, a rate cut by the RBI was expected on Tuesday. But none expected it to be as big as this. For the 4th time this year, the central bank has reduced the repo rate by 50 basis points to a 4.5-year low of 6.75%. The cash reserve ratio was also kept stable at 4% as the reverse repo rate fell to 5.75%.
The Reserve Bank intends to be accommodative to the extent possible, given its inflation goals, while recognizing that continuing government policy implementation, structural reforms, and corporate actions leading to higher productivity will be the primary impetus for sustainable growth.
RBI justified the rate cut, saying the consumer inflation remained below the 6% target for January next year. The centre welcomed the move but said it would reassess the GDP target after RBI revised it to 7.4%.
This decision of the RBI will significantly provide policy support to the real economy and help in the recovery process. We are looking forward now to the transmission of these cuts which will effectively help to boost confidence and investment.
RBI has now put the onus on the banks and the centre to ensure the benefits are passed on to customers as soon as possible. Once the banks reduce lending rates, EMIs are set to go down. Within minutes of the RBI policy announcement, SBI reduced its lending rate by 0.40% to 9.3%. Andhra Bank also cut its lending rates by 0.25%. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And recovering from early losses, the Sensex surged over 750 points from the session's low. The surge came soon after the RBI reduced rates today. The Sensex was down 300 points during intraday trade, but ended the day with a gain of over 160 points. The Nifty also gained the 7,800 marks by rising over 40 points. And we're joined by senior journalist Priyaranjan Das to help us understand, Priyaranjan, as far as the governor's move is concerned. I mean, Raghuram Rajan doesn't stop from surprising us when repo rates are expected to be cut, he doesn't cut them. And when they're expected to be cut by 25 basis points, there's a 50 basis point cuts. But in terms of what it really means, it does mean cheaper loans for the middle class. But in terms of the overall effect on the economy, what do you think?
See, the surprise element is because of the extent of cut of 50 basis point. That is because he has front-loaded the cut in view of the global commodity prices almost crashing. So that has enabled him to front-load the cost,
Right.
the cut. Now, the key thing, of course, is how much of it is going to be passed on by the banks. And as we know, interest rate cut is a double-edged sword
Right.
insofar as common people are concerned. Now, one, that the cut definitely would create an atmosphere of feel-good factor, I would say, and the kind of demand, consumer demand sluggishness that we've been noticing in several sectors of the economy, hopefully this kind of an accommodative monetary policy would stop that kind of decline that we're witnessing in terms of consumer demand, number one. But the extent to which the banks would actually be able to pass on these the policy rate cuts in terms of both deposit rates for the savers,
Right.
and for the loan, the lending rates for the borrowers. That is to be seen.
Right.
Now, we've had State Bank of India, the largest bank, announcing a 40 basis points. So it's not a full 50, exact correlated transmission of the policy cut into the SBI's base rate. So, banks themselves, since their balance sheets are not particularly good, they are saddled with a lot of bad debt,
Right.
and they have to make provisioning for bad debt. They are constrained to, they are not able to do a full passing on of the policy rate cut. So even though Reserve Bank of India has surprised by front-loading policy rate cut, that is not getting immediately transmitted to the full extent.
All right, so then the question remains, I mean, as you pointed out, the NPAs of the banks is a huge concern for the economy, and that perhaps is not really the focus for the government or the bank themselves, not enough action being taken over there. But in terms of the macroeconomic picture, do you think this will spur demand that has been completely lacking in terms of just consumption?
As I said, it will, even though it won't spur demand, it could help arrest the sluggishness in demand that we are witnessing in several sectors. But immediately, I do not think people are rushing to buy cars or buying homes immediately. That is because in the the bigger picture of the economy is one of even the finance minister calls it a recovery phase.
Right.
It's not a boom phase or not a growth phase as yet. So as long as that is not the case, there is not going to be a demand surge because of this cut. Essentially, what the cut does is, it satisfies this chorus for rate cut that has been going on for quite some time, particularly by the corporate India and certain economic advisors,
Right.
who wanted, who thought that it will be a panacea of sort in terms of elevating the economy from its current difficulties.
Right.
That's actually not going to be the case.
Right. Because I would want to know why is that so? Because in terms of the interest rates for big businesses might come down, but does it go into rural India? Does it increase increase demand as far as rural growth is concerned?
That's a great point. You've had the monsoon has not been that good, and parts of the country are under drought conditions. And part of the country are, of course, suffered from floods. Given the situation and the distress that we see in rural India, and the rural incomes have been under pressure, there is widespread indebtedness among farmers. This rate cut is not going to help farmers, reduce the farmers' debt burden or stop farmers committing suicide in several parts of the country that we are witnessing. So there is, given the rural situation today where incomes and wages are depressed, immediate rural demand, this rate cut, even if it is passed on by the banks, it's not going to immediately create much of a spurt in rural demand either. So rural consumption items, for several of those rural consumption items where we are witnessing a slowdown, that process may get halted, but that's not going to be an upturn immediately that we'll see. On the other hand, we know that on the savers, for people who are savings, particularly small savings, now there is going to be a revision downward of the rates. So that's going to affect those who leave, so to say, on their small savings interest rate. That's going to not only affect the bank's deposit rates, but also small savings, and perhaps including even things like Provident Fund, which will be under pressure to now revise the return downwards.
All right, quoting Raghuram Rajan, he's done what he's done. But Priya Ranjan Das, thank you very much for coming in and trying to help us understand what the RBI governor has done with this 50 basis points cut in the repo rate and how that affects the larger economy. Well, moving on now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has concluded his visit to the United States, thanking the American public for the warm welcome according to him and his delegates. Modi also said a lot of ground has been covered during this trip.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi summed up his US trip in a series of tweets Tuesday morning, saying that the visit shows the extraordinary depth and diversity of the bilateral relationship. Modi said a lot of ground had been covered in the last few days. The Prime Minister also thanked the American people for their hospitality and the huge welcome accorded to him and his delegates everywhere they went. The Prime Minister left for Delhi on Tuesday morning. He made a brief stopover in Frankfurt before flying on to the national capital. On the last day, Modi addressed the UN Peacekeeping Summit. Here, he once again made a strong pitch for UN Security Council reforms. During his 5-day-long visit, Prime Minister Modi met several world leaders and interacted with CEOs of top businesses and sold investment opportunities in India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
On to election news in Bihar, and an FIR was launched in the state today against senior BJP leader Sushil Kumar Modi. Lodged under the Representation of People's Act, it says Sushil Modi violated the Model Code of Conduct by assuring voters of freebies, a charge that the leader has denied.
Senior BJP leader Sushil Kumar Modi caught on the wrong side of the Model Code of Conduct. Addressing an election rally on Monday, the BJP leader allegedly promised to give away laptops, color TVs and dhotis and saris to voters. Talking to reporters in Patna, Sushil Modi challenged the FIR and urged an election commission inquiry.
बिहार के अंदर 50,000 लड़के लड़कियों को हम लैपटॉप देंगे, इसमें क्या गुनाह किया है? हमने कहा है कि हमारी सरकार बनेगी तो हर एक गरीब परिवार को धोती साड़ी खरीदने के लिए पैसा दिया जाएगा। ये तो हमारा अधिकार है। हम चुनाव जीतने के बाद क्या करेंगे मतदाताओं को बताने का हमारा अधिकार है। घोषणा पत्र में क्या चीज शामिल है नहीं शामिल इसका ऐसे कोई संबंध नहीं है और घोषणा पत्र उचित समय पर जारी किया जाएगा। रोज नीतीश जी रोज नई नई घोषणा कर रहे हैं, उन पर FIR नहीं हुआ, लेकिन मेरे पर FIR हो गया।
Sushil Modi reportedly made the remarks during an election meeting in favor of BJP candidate Anand Bhushan Pandey. The Camu district police said they filed the FIR on the basis of video footage of the rally.
भाजपा के पास एक ही चीज है, वो है धनबल, अकूत धनबल, जो उनके क्रोनी कैपिटलिस्ट फ्रेंड्स प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं और सुशील मोदी जी कॉम्प्राडोर हैं, वो इसको पहुंचाने का कार्य कर रहे हैं।
Elections in Bhabua, where Sushil Modi allegedly made the remarks, will be held in the second phase on 19th of October. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, the Election Commission has ordered an FIR against RJD President Lalu Prasad for his caste remark at a rally on Sunday. But unfazed by the EC warning, Lalu has once again vowed to continue his fight for the backward castes. Lalu's remark has triggered a war of words among rival political parties.
समाज के जो बेवकूफ है इनको छितराओ, जनवंशियों को, पिछड़ों को बोलता है कि भाई वोट अन्य हो जाएगा।
On Sunday, RJD President Lalu Prasad triggered a fresh war of words over caste-based reservation. Kicking off his younger son Tejasvi Yadav's election campaign from Raghopur Assembly constituency, Lalu gave a clarion call to all members of Yadav caste and OBCs to rally behind the secular alliance. The Election Commission took note of the remark and issued a warning on Monday.
हमारे मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट में और हमारे कानून में इसकी स्पष्ट व्यवस्था है, यदि कोई किसी भी प्रकार के एक्ट से कास्ट का उपयोग डालने में ओपनली, जिसको कि हमारी लीगल तंत्र उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई कर सकें, वो हम मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट में भी करेंगे और जो हमारे सब्सटेंटिव लॉ हैं उसके तहत भी हम उसकी कार्रवाई करेंगे.
But Lalu is unfazed by the warning. On Tuesday, he vowed to continue his fight for the backward castes and triggered a fresh war of words. And it comes despite BJP's clarification on its stand on the reservation issue.
RSS हमारा आरक्षण खत्म करना चाह रही है. वो जातीय मीटिंग करता, सब जगह वो लोग करता. ये कौन होते हैं मोहन भागवत बीजेपी खत्म करने वाला? लालू यादव और हमारी पार्टी. मुझे फांसी पर भी चढ़ा दोगे तो लालू यादव अपना आवाज बंद करने वाला नहीं है गरीबों का.
मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आ रहा है कि सब लोग लालू यादव के पीछे हाथ धो के क्यों पड़ गए. कल सुशील मोदी जी का भाषण नहीं सुना आपने, जहां उन्होंने कहा कि तेली बनी अरवल छोड़ के भाग गए, जहां प्रधानमंत्री खुद कहते हैं कि ओबीसी ओबीसी का अकेला बच्चा मैं हूं.
भाजपा आरक्षण पर बिल्कुल समर्पित है. जो एससी हैं, जो एसटी हैं, जो पिछड़े हैं, वो अति पिछड़े हैं, उनके संवैधानिक आरक्षण उनके आर्थिक सामाजिक विकास के लिए जरूरी है. लालू जी के पास कोई मुद्दा नहीं बचा है.
The rhetoric on reservation was triggered last week by RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat's suggestion to review the policy on reservation. Coming ahead of the polls, the RJD-JDU combined criticized the remark. The alliance is now focused to keep its vote bank intact, which has large share of backward caste voters. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Time for us to take a very quick break, but coming up on the other side, Russia considers joining the anti-Islamic State coalition to launch airstrikes after Putin holds talks with Obama. More on that on the other side.
The poll juggernaut rolls out in Bihar. Modi's NDA takes on Nitish's Grand Alliance. Who will win this most important election battle since 2014? Watch Verdict 2015, Monday through Saturday on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now on to news of the FDI. Students who had called off their 18-day hunger strike after the government agreed to come to the negotiating table and held with the officials of the INB ministry today. That meeting, the agitating students have two main demands, namely dissolution of the present FDI society and simultaneously setting up a new search committee through a transparent process. This committee will look into the appointments of the chairpersons, members and other staff. As the deadlock continues, the ministry officials will have another round of talks with the students on the 1st of October. Let's now get you more national news and updates nationwide. 3 immediate support vessels have been inducted into the Indian Navy. The 3 ISV vessels have been commissioned off the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai. The vessels, which can patrol for around 5 days at a stretch, will be used to protect offshore development areas like Mumbai High, the Panna Mukta oil fields and the Tapti gas field. Mumbai's domestic and international airports are on high alert after receiving a terror threat last night. Security is also being strengthened at the city's famous Taj Hotel, which is one of the locations attacked by Pakistani terrorists in November 2008. The threat comes a day before 12 men convicted for the 2006 Hero train blast in Mumbai are to be sentenced. The Supreme Court today dismissed the petition of Anshuman Ruiya and Ravi Ruiya of the SR group and said they will have to face trial in the 2G case. The Ruiyas had argued that they were charged with cheating and conspiracy and not under the Prevention of Corruption Act, so they can't be tried by the special court hearing the 2G spectrum case. The CBI opposed this, saying a retrial cannot be ordered when the case is almost coming to an end. On to some international news now. And a day after the UNGA debate, Russian President Vladimir Putin is considering whether to join the US and its allies in their fight against the Islamic State. His comments come after a meeting with US President Barack Obama on the sidelines of the UN summit. However, a split is evident over the fate of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and how to end the Syrian conflict, which is also one of the reasons for the rise of the Islamic State.
Attempting to break the ice.
The dividends will be great.
The US and Russian presidents sharing a toast at the UN, trading frosty looks. Differences over Syria are obvious. In his firebrand speech at the UNGA on Monday, Obama called the Syrian President Assad a tyrant and the chief culprit. Putin, on the other hand, proposed a coup against the US global leadership, seeking to dislodge control from the US-led coalition battling IS.
Очень надеюсь, что нам удастся найти точки соприкосновения со всеми нашими партнерами, с Турцией, с Соединенными Штатами Америки. Ними тоже со всеми заинтересованными странами, развивая процесс политических преобразований в регионе и Сирии.
The United States is prepared to work with any nation, including Russia and Iran, to resolve the conflict. We must recognize that there cannot be, after so much bloodshed, so much carnage, a return to the pre-war status quo.
After an elaborate meeting with the US president, Putin said Russia is pondering what more it could do to support the Syrian government and Kurdish forces fighting the Islamic State militants, reiterating his stand that there is no alternative to cooperating with Assad's military to fight against IS.
На территории этой страны в частности. Что же касается нашего российского участия в этой работе, то мы думаем на тему о том, что мы могли бы сделать дополнительно для того, чтобы поддержать тех, кто реально в поле.
Vladimir Putin also held talks with Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi on the sidelines of UNGA. The Islamic State threat was the focus. Earlier, Russia offered Iraq military and other aid to push back the Islamic State militants, which is also a concern for Washington. Despite war of words, Putin assured the UN chief that they would conduct airstrikes only after approval from the United Nations. He also ruled out Russian troops taking part in the ground operation in Syria. However, the situation is tense on the diplomatic front as both US and France insisted that Assad must go. Putin is stern, as he says they are not citizens of Syria, so they should stay away from choosing its leadership. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, the BCCI is set to choose a new president. It has called for a special general meeting on the 4th of October to elect late President Jagmohan Dalmia's successor. Former President Shashank Manohar has emerged as the consensus candidate for the job.
BCCI will hold a special general body meeting on October 4th to elect its new president following the death of Jagmohan Dalmia. Former BCCI President Shashank Manohar is widely expected to take over as the new chief. He's unlikely to face any opposition as he enjoys the support of both the Sharad Pawar and Anurag Thakur factions, who control about 20 votes out of the 29. If elected, this will be his second term as BCCI boss after his stint from 2008 to 2011.
मैंने शशांक मनोहर जी से अनुरोध किया था कि आप आइए बीसीसीआई के अध्यक्ष पद की जिम्मेदारी लीजिए। उन्होंने उस पर सहमति जताई है और मुझे पूर्ण आशा है भारी बहुमत के साथ वो इस चुनाव को जीतेंगे।
Former board president N. Srinivasan will not be able to attend the meeting. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court rejected a BCCI plea to review its verdict on former board chief N. Srinivasan. He was also barred by the Supreme Court from contesting for the BCCI president's post on the ground of conflict of interest.
BCCI filed a review petition against the order of 22nd January passed by Supreme Court. On that order, Supreme Court finally dismissed the 6.2.4 rules of BCCI. And after that order, Srinivasan out from the BCCI.
The court's decision has barred Srinivasan from attending the meeting as the president of the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association. However, he could still cast his vote to pick Dalmia's successor. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, that's all from us. Goodbye.